We orient our lives around the calendar year, don't we? I mean, most of our units of time are scheduled around that. We expect things to happen on the same date year to year, and things that don't, like Easter or Ramadan or Hanukkah, they kind of throw us off a little bit because they're not happening on the same date every year. And most of our budgets are based around that, business metrics, things like that. And of course, there's the joy of our taxes that are based on how much we make within the calendar year. And we even give personalities to different years, don't we? I mean, few of us want to go back and repeat 2020, right? We talk about that as being a surprising year, a bad year. But did you know that we as Christians have a calendar as well? We don't only adapt the calendar of the secular world, but we have a Christian calendar, or sometimes it's called the Awakening calendar. This gives context to the events in our lives, and it's based on the events in the life of Jesus. Because of this calendar, because as a follower of Jesus, you have more in common with someone who follows Jesus, who lives in extreme poverty in Nicaragua, who is struggling to feed their kids, than you do with someone who lives on your same street and agrees with you in your political views and your political party, who's not a follower of Jesus. Because this is the big picture about how we orient our lives around the life of Jesus. This weekend, we're celebrating Advent. This is the beginning of the Christian New Year. This season is one of anticipation of Christ's coming at Christmas that we celebrate at that time. And this is a time of opening ourselves and preparing ourselves to receive Christ into our lives, either for the first time or in a new way, in a fresh way. This year, we're exploring this through the lens of roots, the family tree of Jesus. This is based on something that's often called the Jesse tree, which is an ancient way of examining Advent and Christmas through the stories of the lives of the people who are included in the genealogy of Jesus. So basically, over these next few weeks, we're going to be looking at the people, the places, and the story of the family tree of Jesus. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1, the prophet foretells some 600 years before Jesus was born. He says, "A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord." This is what the prophet foretold, that this shoot would come up from the stump of Jesse. And Jesse was the father of King David, and Jesus is one in the lineage of King David. As we're in this time of Advent, the story of Advent is really the family story of the church. The Christmas story is the one where the creator of the universe came to step into the ordinary lives of the people of earth with a message. That message is clearly spelled out at the beginning of the book of John, where he says, the light shines in the darkness. And this light that illumines every heart is the one who came to us in the person of Jesus. If you've been around the church at all, then maybe it seems like we kind of celebrate the same thing year after year, right? As we come towards Christmas time and even the Advent season, it's like, oh, all right, well, this is the same type of thing that we talked about last year and the year before. And I tell you, I admire preachers who've been doing this for 40 years, and I wonder how they come up with something fresh to say about Christmas again. Because it seems like we're looking at the same thing. So why do we do that? When my kids were younger, they loved hearing the same stories over and over again at bedtime. They had their favorites, and they would read them until, every night that I would read them, they wanted to read them. And so those words are still burned into my brain. I can remember them, even though I haven't read some of those books for years. But they loved it. And I tell you what, if I would try to skip a page because, I was tired or it was late and they needed to get to bed, they were not having it. They would call me out on it and would go back and have to read that page that I tried to skip. Why is it that they wanted to hear every word when they knew what was going to happen? They knew what those pages said that I had skipped. What is it? There's something about re-anticipating the action. They knew the outcome of the story, but they wanted the journey of getting there. They looked forward to what was happening each step along the way before things were finally resolved at the end. Part of the fun is the expectation. And at Advent, we have a chance to re-anticipate the action. Holidays matter for our families. They matter if you're gathering together with family or close friends that are like family at Thanksgiving or at Christmas or the 4th of July. Whatever celebration that you have, it matters because it brings us together around an important theme. And Christmas and Advent do that for the church. These holidays matter because we're gathering around the events of the life of Christ among us. We're ordering our time around them as we anticipate the coming of Jesus and the coming of Christmas as we celebrate in the Northern Hemisphere in the wintertime, and we order our time around these events. And we remember the stories. Year after year, we tell them again and again. And each time we have the chance to meet Jesus in new and fresh ways. It might be a tradition that you've done for almost your whole life, but still Jesus can speak to you something new that you need to hear right now. He can speak through the rhythms and the themes of this Christian year. This year, as we look at roots, we're kind of looking at the first of these two cycles of the Christian year. Robert Weber divides the Christian year into two cycles. The first is the cycle of light. And that begins with Advent, and then to Christmas, and then to Epiphany, where the wise men came to recognize Jesus. And this cycle of light, the Advent is the time of anticipation, and then Christmas is the celebration. And then the Epiphany is the proclamation, where the good news is spread. And that's the first cycle of the Christian year, the cycle of light. The second cycle, he calls the cycle of life. This begins with the season of anticipation being Lent, and then the celebration of the event of Easter and Jesus' resurrection. And then the season after this is Pentecost and Kingdom Tide and Ordinary Time. These are the seasons of proclamation as we see the birth of the church and the proclaiming of God's kingdom. And now we're entering into this first cycle of light here at Advent in the Christian New Year. We can expect that God will meet us. He has new things that he wants to say to you right now. Open yourself up, even to experience longing for him, and he will meet us in that longing. Come with an expectant heart together with the family of God. In this season of Advent, we also see the family story of Jesus. Jesus doesn't come to us out of the blue. He doesn't just descend from heaven in a warm, glowing light. He was born as a little child, and he came into a family. He comes from someone, from somewhere, and from something. From a person, a place, and that something is a story. We all come from someone and from somewhere and from something. For Jesus, the someone that he comes from is his people, the people of Israel. And the somewhere are the towns and the land and the terrain of first century Palestine. And the something, the story that Jesus comes from, is the story of God's covenantal love for his people, Israel. that was not just for them, but so that they could spread that love to the entire world. This is the story that Jesus enters into as a baby, that the God of the universe extended his love towards the people of Israel. Yahweh himself, the great I am. You and I, we come from a people, a place, and a story as well. You come from the people, your lineage, your ancestors, going all the way back. And we come from a place. Maybe it's your hometown, or maybe it's more of a homeland if you moved around. But we come from a place. And we come from a story. The story of your family, and the story of God's love for you and for your family, and the ways that he has pursued your family line for generations. All of those things go into making you who you are, along with your personality and your experiences and your decisions. They all combine, but none of those are wasted. No part of your story or your family or your place are wasted. Nothing is going to be lost. Jesus had a people, a place, and a story through which he comes to us at Advent. Open yourself up to the ways that Jesus' family story can speak to you. Look for the ways that Jesus has been at work in your own family. How has he worked and shown himself in maybe the lives of your ancestors? Maybe you know your parents' story or your grandparents' story. Maybe you're fortunate and you know the story of some ancestors that have been passed down, or that you've got a relative who's done some genealogical research. And maybe you can see ways that God has worked through your family line. He is working to bring redemption, to bring healing, and to bring restoration for your family, and through you to the people around you. Jesus is reaching out to you. Isaiah saw hundreds of years before Jesus' birth that a shoot will come from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. From this lineage, Isaiah would continue that the Spirit of the Lord will rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding and knowledge, counsel, might, fear of the Lord. Now, it's not only from Isaiah that we see this lineage of Jesus. We also see it in the Gospels, including the Gospel of Matthew, that begins with the story of those ancestors of Jesus. The Bible clearly wants to convey to us that God entered the world through a family. He's coming to us as Jesus. In the biblical Hebrew, the name was Yeshua. It means the Lord saves. He comes as Emmanuel, God with us. This Advent, you have the opportunity to look for ways that God has been at work in the amazing and wild family story of Jesus. And you might see him work in new ways in your own life. For some of you, that might feel like a miracle, to think that the God of the universe would work in your life. But he is. And he wants you to see it. When we allow him to open our eyes to what he's doing, to help us to see how he's really at work in our lives, then we can move from focusing on only seeing the brokenness in the world or the brokenness in our lives, and we can see the fullness of God's miraculous work in us and in the lives of those around us. So let's look at this family story of Jesus together over these coming weeks. And let's allow God to speak to us about his work in our lives this Advent season. God, thank you that you came to the earth. Thank you for choosing a human family to do it. Thank you for what it means for us and the ways that you work in our lives, even as sinful and broken as we are. Thank you for your redemption, your healing, and your wholeness. Help us to experience that in new ways this Advent season. Amen.